really let that soak in, that this is an ibadah, and it's not just you going on Amazon and buying your next book or something. But is there any other way that we can try and reconnect with that? Because like that, even that, that's great, but that's still quite a distance from the 500 years ago where you're actually giving zakat with your hand to people. Is there any other ways that we can try and recreate that or get
I
connected?
mean, people can action that, right? Really go and see people in need. And it starts from like, it's permissible to give zakat to your brother or sister who's in need. But obviously, that feeling is different if it's your relative, right? You can, if you know a Muslim who's in need, and you feel confident that they are eligible for zakat, you could give them zakat, right? That would be a very, clear, transparent, and an identical of what would happen 500 years ago, pure replica of that practice where you go out there, look for people, and give them in need. Yeah, if you're traveling, sometimes you travel to other countries and you see people who are in need. That's also another way to give them zakat, to give them sadaqah, and to assist people. But yeah, I mean, that would be the best if you could do that. But I guess the benefit of an institution, right, it allows you to compound and scale the impact of your zakat, right? Whereas if you just go and give zakat to one person, it might be that those funds might not have the same level of impact that an institution can provide, because they can signpost, give other services, they can help, they can monitor, and potentially give further assistance to the individual. So institutional giving has its benefits without a shadow of a doubt. Uh, I mean, look, there's another thing. People can always volunteer in charities. I think that's also great, right? If it's too difficult to go and find people who are deserving and struggling, you can always volunteer some time in any charity you feel comfortable with and give some time. And then you'll come across people who are in need. And that will bring back that spirit of zakah, of empathy, of sympathy, of caring for others in your life, right? So that's that. Now let's get a bit technical now. I want everybody to have their thinking caps on. Look, whenever we talk about paying zakah, there's two distinct discussions when it comes to calculation and understanding zakah. One is the conditions, right? What are the conditions which make zakat obligatory upon a person? That's the first discussion that we must have. Second discussion that we must have is what are the zakatable assets? Okay, so these are the two separate discussions. So we're talking about the first set right now. So of course, everybody knows this. Only a Muslim needs to pay zakah. Very easy, very, very simple. Then number two, you need to have mental capacity. You must have mental capacity. What do we mean by that? Is if it's a person who's unfortunately has any mental deficiency, they can't understand, their cognitive ability is very weak, right? Then zakah is not due upon them according to the Hanafi school. Yes, the other scholars are of this view. All the other madhabs, they're of this view that if there's a person who lacks mental capacity, then their guardian should pay zakat if the wealth qualifies for zakah. Adolescent. Zakah, according to the Hanafi school again, it's not due upon a child, a minor. So you have a 5-year-old kid whose father, set up a child trust fund for him, or a junior ISA, a Sharia compliant one, and he's got £10,000 in there. There's no zakat to pay on that for the child, according to the Hanafi school. Yes, according to other madhabs, zakah is due upon their wealth, and the guardian, the father, will be responsible and um, liable. Okay, and so that's really like the three conditions on who should pay zakah, which is fairly straightforward. Now, nisab, right?
Just quickly, welcome to all the people from the socials who've just joined. I understand there's a blizzard of people who've just joined here on that front. So welcome. You've not missed much. We've said zakat's a great thing. You should be giving it. And if you're adult, baligh, and eligible to give zakat, actually, I mean, I've completely butchered the last slide, Mufti Saab. But that's basically what you've missed.
Just
Mental
to add
capacity.
one more thing, not only should you be giving it, you should be feeling it, right?
Allahu Akbar.
Right? That's the main thing, giving and feeling. So zakah is more about feeling as well as giving, right? It's just very important. So that's what we've been trying to emphasize. Feel it, give it, do it, right? That's our kind of line here.
You should take over from the head of marketing at Nike, I think.
I've received offers from various companies for marketing. I've declined. No, so Bismillah, right? I mean, so we're on Nisab now, right? When it comes to Nisab, what is Nisab? Nisab is simply a threshold. Forget the Arabic, the linguistics, it doesn't matter. For us, it's just a threshold. The moment a person hits this threshold, then zakah becomes binding. Look, now you're seeing two nisabs, you're seeing gold and silver. What's all that about? For gold and silver, very basically, really there was only one nisab. There weren't two nisabs ever. There was only one nisab. At the time of the Messenger of Allah, it was the bimetallic system that was being used, right? So the gold and silver standard, that it was the gold currency that was used, right? And they also had silver. So the Messenger of Allah said to people, look, if you have 200 dirhams, you'll have to pay zakah. And if you have 20 dinar, 20 which is gold coins, you need to pay zakah. Because these two things were in circulation. But really the purchasing power was the same. The ratio was 10 to 1. That was the ratio between gold and silver, even for zakat purposes. So that's why there's really only one nisab. So what we advise and encourage people is use a silver nisab. Some scholars encourage gold. That's absolutely fine. If you go with a gold view, no problem. We follow that view. But we generally advocate for silver, just being the more common opinion that people practice upon. So all you have to do is you have to see that the first time when you have wealth equaling, once you're mature, of course, adolescent, if you follow the Hanafi school, once you reach the silver threshold, then you now start your zakat year starts and it begins. Now look, let's go through the cycle together, right? This is a very simple example. Just for this exercise, I've kept the nisab the same. Really, the nisab fluctuates. So where you see this nisab, which says 362, really that fluctuates, right? But just for ease of demonstration, we've kept it the same. Here comes a person. First time, just say he's a 20-year-old kid, and is Jumad Thaniya, and he's hit the nisab. Okay, and we're looking at the lunar calendar here, as you can notice. Zakah is, we use the lunar calendar, although there is some permission to use the solar calendar or the Gregorian calendar. But I always tell people, if we stick to the lunar calendar or the Islamic calendar, it allows us to keep track or connection with our heritage, right? There's a lot of significance in these months, right? And events take place across these months. So it's one way for us to keep that connection, because otherwise our kids and grandchildren will not know what safar is. What is that, right? Only thing that we know is that nasheed, right? Of the 12 months of the Islamic calendar. Beyond that, what do we know? So it's important we keep some connection. So a person comes, first time, here, look, the howl, which just means year, he has money equaling the nisab, the black line. After 12 months on his zakat year end, right? So just as you have a financial year end, on your zakat year end, you can see he's still above the nisab. And therefore, how much money does he have? He has £400. So he won't pay zakat on the nisab amount, he will pay on £400. He'll pay on the money that he has with him. Okay, neither will he deduct the nisab from his £400. So he won't do 400 minus 362. Neither will he do 2.5% of 362. Rather, he will do 2.5% of 400. Is that clear, Ibrahim? That's cool.
That's perfect. There's no tax-free allowance, guys.
Yep, exactly. Right now, look, this is the next one. This one's a bit more tricky, but again, I'm sure everybody will find this easy to understand. This time, look, he's received some Eid gifts, right? His name is Ismail. He's received some Eid gifts in Jumad Thaniya, and he's gone over the nisab. Here's the nisab again, this threshold here, right? He has over approximately £650. But as you can see, he goes and buys some gadgets. He gets another gift, but his wealth decreases. He's bought some things across the year. Come year end, you can see here's the nisab. His wealth is below the nisab. Is there zakat due on his wealth? Yes or no? No zakat due. Why? Because at the end of the year, he did not have wealth equaling the nisab or exceeding the nisab. Right? So he will not have to pay zakat at all. Example number 3.
This might be one for later. We might actually be covering this right now, Mufti Sahib. But what about situations where where circumstances where there is a huge amount of money that comes in and that's sat with that person during that nisab portion, but they're really worried about, like, if they pay that, they're just going to go bankrupt because it's that much zakat. Feel free
Yeah.
to kick this into the Q&A, or
No,
because
I mean, just to touch upon that, I mean, zakat, the answer I generally give to this is if a person has received so much, right, 100,000, zakat is only 2.5%, which is 2.5K. It'd be very difficult just to understand how that can really impact somebody financially when the sum overall is substantial, right? So I mean, yeah, if you don't have the liquidity to pay, that's a separate question. So you don't have the ability, the funds to pay all of it in one go for whatever reason. You're drawing down gradually, as an example. Then what you could do is you can make monthly payments or small payments just to cover that liability. But it wouldn't remove the liability. So the liability is one point, but then the second discussion, the secondary issue is the ability to pay, and there's different answers around that particular question that's raised. Now, look, this is a third scenario. This was an interesting one. So the person in the beginning of the year, you can see he had over and above Nisab, and as you can see, he drops all the way below Nisab. Now, if you look in Muharram, it says whole ends. What that means is your year is cancelled. When a person hits zero, right, there's two times in zakat where your year is cancelled, nullified, meaning that date is no longer considered. Number one is when you hit zero going to the minus, your year's gone. Number two, at the end of one cycle, so at the end of your zakat year, you did not have wealth equaling the nisab. That year is finished now. You will not continue using the same year over and over again, the same date. So if, for example, this year, my date was the 10th of Ramadan, but comes 10th of Ramadan, I don't have the nisab threshold. That means I will not now start a new year from 10th to the following 10th of Ramadan. Rather, I will wait until I have funds equaling the nisab. That can be in Shawwal, that can be in Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah. And then a new cycle will start. That's very important to understand because zakat is like a yearly cycle. The Messenger of Allah told us, حَتَّى يَحُولَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْلِ, this idea of a year passing. So this is really the way zakat works, right? Important to keep that in mind. So really, zakat should be paid throughout the year. But it just so happens because it's difficult for many of us, it just seems that we pay 300 million pounds of zakat in Ramadan. And it just seems like we all have the same zakat date and the nisab. We all became owners of nisab on the same date, it seems, on the 27th of Ramadan or the 1st of Ramadan, right? which is fine. Let's continue, but make sure we pay.
it's a Mubarak day, Mufti Sahib.
I agree. That's when we all had a windfall, right, of funds. So yeah, look, in this example, as you can see, the year ends here. As I said, he's dipped. Now he'll wait the next time he gets funds equaling the nisab, he'll start a new cycle. So in Rabi'ul Thani, his new year will start, and the following year, Rabi'ul Thani, he'll again check, is he equaling or exceeding the nisab? If he's equaling or exceeding, he'll pay zakat. If it's below, that year is now cancelled, and he'll start a new year eventually when he acquires nisab. So now let's kind of zoom in. We've understood the mechanics of how zakat works. We know who has to pay zakat. But what is the calculation? What's the formula? This is the formula. Add up all your zakatable assets, deduct any liabilities, and there you go. You have your net zakatable assets figure upon which you pay 2.5%. If you're an accountant or have any accounting background, this will be very, very easy for you. But really, it's just add everything that you have, which is zakatable, deduct those things which you can deduct, and that's it. The sum at the end is what you want to work with. And we'll show you this in the NZF calculator. So cash. All cash. Simple. With cash is very easy. Whatever cash you have, wherever it is, as long as you own that money, you have to pay zakat on it. Anything which has been spent before year end is not zakatable. So if I spent £10,000 as an example, 10 days before my zakat year end, I booked a holiday, right? And it cost me £10,000. I was optimistic that, for example, Saudi Arabia is going to be a green from a traffic light system, right? So I've booked an Umrah. I spent £10,000. Now I will not pay zakat on that £10,000. It's gone. It's a debt liability has been incurred, or I've even spent it. It's gone. Zakat will not be due upon that. It's only that money on year end which is unspent and it's been retained by yourself. Zakat is due on those funds. Money owed to you, right? These might seem there's so much text there, But the reason why there's so much text is because these slides are for you to take away. So I don't want you to say afterwards, or anybody to say that there was only pictures, there was no text. So I've put the text in for yourselves that you can refer to later on. But really, look, there's just two things. If money is owed to you because of sales that you've made, right? You sold something. You're a business. We're talking about a business here, commercial goods, right? Zakat is due upon the outstanding. So outstanding invoices for inventory and stock, that's zakatable every single year. And likewise, loans. If you've given a loan to anybody, that is zakatable also every single year. However, you have the benefit and option of waiting until you receive the money and then paying the zakat for it every single year retrospectively. So you can backdate and pay for every single year for the last 10 years, as an example. Or if you have the ability, you can pay zakat every single year, just add it in and pay zakat for it. It's not a problem. So those are the only two scenarios where receivables are zakatable. A sale of inventory and stock. What I mean by this is business goods. I don't mean personal items. So if you sold your mobile phone, you sold your residential property, or you sold your holiday home, right? And the money is outstanding, you're expecting the money soon. Zakat will not be due upon the outstanding receivables. It's only on business uh, credit invoices or outstanding payments. That's all, nothing else. And number two is loans. If you've given anybody a loan, whether it's a friend, family, or interest-free facility to somebody as a business, then that is zakatable. Everything else, there's no zakat, right? So whether it's loans without any hope of repayment, you've lost hope, there's no zakat on that. It'll be counted as new money when it comes. Sale of personal items, there's no zakat on that when it's still outstanding. Wages, fees, remuneration of services, there's no zakat due. A man, Ibrahim, imagine this, right? A guy, he says to his wife when they're getting married, as the mahr and the dawah, he says to his wife that I will give you £30,000, right? That's the mahr. It's been 10 years, the wife's not even seen £1,000, right? And he promised £30,000. Now, is it fair? And will the wife be responsible to pay zakat every year on that £30,000? It's not. It wouldn't work like that, right? So zakat is not due, and that's like a blessing of Sharia. That's why one of the benefits and wisdoms of this is because it's not a trade activity per se. And then finally, inheritance shares. So if somebody passes away and the inheritors are waiting for the probate to come to an end and distribution to begin, then zakat will not be due until they actually receive, right? So there'll be no zakat due for that period. When they do receive it, any money that's retained in the next year, they will pay zakat on it at that moment in time, right? So this is receivables done. All you have to understand is two things: inventory and stock, and loans. That's it. Nothing else, right? Everything other receivable, you can park it to a side and you don't have to worry. Gold and silver, again, very, very easy. Look, if you're a Hanafi, you just got to pay zakat on all your gold and silver. Simple as that. Whatever shape, whatever color, whatever form, however many carats, it doesn't matter. Zakat is due upon it. Just remember that as a rule of thumb.
This is the point where everyone becomes a Shafi'i or a Maliki.
Exactly. Exactly.
Go
Or
to
people
that side.
people wish they were a Shafi, right? If they don't know the technicalities of converting, right? Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a Hanafi, then zakat is due upon everything, right? All your gold, your silver. Every other madhab, they don't consider personal gold or jewelry really. So a sister, she has earrings, bangles, rings, which are made of gold. They're the view that that's like your garments, right? That's your accessories, right? So you go to stores for accessories. This is what it is, nothing else, right? And there's no
Maybe this is the month when suddenly people start wearing like gold ingots all around their bodies. Make them part of their jewelry.
Yeah, I mean, you will see all crazy things going on, right? So this is it. Look, this is according to the other madhabs. As I mentioned, when it comes to mixed metals, then you will still pay zakat. So if it's 9 carat gold ring, you will still pay zakat on that 9 carats of gold, right? How do you work this out? Use the scrap gold value. What does that mean? That means what's the price of the gold that you have? It's like the second-hand price. Because when you search online and you look for the universal price, that is generally for new gold, right? It's a brand new gold. That's the price of that. Scrap gold is always 3, 4, £5 cheaper. And so there's like a website that I use, which is gold-traders.co.uk. Gold-traders.co.uk. That's a really nice website to give you like a breakdown of the scrap gold values of all different carats. So you can easily go on there and calculate how much zakat is due on the item that you have. Okay. Stock.
Just quickly firstly to welcome everyone who's just joined. Please, make yourselves at home. Inshallah, we'll be going so that right now what we're doing is we're running through technicalities of zakat, and then inshallah we'll be doing a live demonstration of zakat calculation in about 7 minutes time, if that's all right, Mufti Saab, as well from your side. And then we'll be going into Q&A, and I know there's been a lot of questions, and we'll inshallah be whizzing through them over the next after the hour mark and get through them, inshallah.
Inshallah. Right. So as we mentioned, look, when it comes to business, it's all about stock and inventory, right? That's the key, the new asset class that is zakatable in a business, stock and inventory. Otherwise, cash and receivables we've discussed. So any business man up there, you'll pay zakat on the stock and inventory you have at its retail price. So whatever it's selling for, that's the amount that you'll pay zakat on. Anything beyond cash, receivables, and stock in the business is not zakatable. So your goodwill, your intangible assets, property, plant, equipment, your fixtures, your fittings, your shelving, none of that's zakatable. Your hardware, your software that you're using, it's not zakatable. Capital goods and fixed assets, they're not zakatable. So your delivery vans and these things are not subject to zakat. If you want to know more about zakat, you can always download the free business guide that we have. So it all comes down to intention. This is we're talking about now investments and even business. If you have this intention that you've bought something to sell, right, you're treating it as a business asset, as a business good, as stock, as inventory. Zakat will always be due on the entire value. However, if it's not a business asset, it's not an inventory, it's not stock, rather it's a long-term investment, or you've bought it as a store of wealth, as an alternative, then it's usually on the underlying zakatable asset, right? So let's look into that a bit further. Property and fixed assets. There's no zakat due on the house that you live in. Okay. So we've discussed that property. When it comes to that, there's no zakat due. If you're renting a property out, again, there's no zakat due on the property value itself. Rather, it's just a rental income. However, if you're a property trader, whereby by business, by trade, what you do is you buy properties, you refurb them, then you flip them, right? You sell them with a profit. In that scenario, zakat will be due on the entire market value of your property. This is your stock. This is what you do for trade purposes. This is what you trade in, right? And therefore, zakat will be due on the full value of the property. When it comes to shares, equity investments, unit trusts, all of this is there just for you to take away. Just understand one thing. The only time when you'll pay zakat on the full value of shares or any investment is when you've gone in purely to buy and sell. That's the only thing you're doing. Meaning you've purchased shares right now and you're looking to flip them again very quickly, like a day trader does. You're not there. That's like, and have this mindset. It's your business. It's your side hustle. Some people I know from 9 to 5, they sit there on the markets. All they do is buy and sell, buy and sell. That's how they earn their income on a weekly or monthly basis, right? So, or it's your side hustle. Every morning or every evening, you'll sit down to trade on the markets, and you're looking for that short-term, gain. That's all you're trying to capture, like fluctuations in over 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever it may be. Only in that scenario, zakat is due on the full value. But beyond that, majority of people don't trade like that, right? When it comes to trading and investing, people are long term. They have like a portfolio. It's more of a growth fund where they'll sell in the future one time. Zakat is not due upon that on the full value. It's only due on the underlying zakatable assets of the company. What we've done at NZF, we've created a proxy. I did the research myself here, where I looked at the 100 FTSE 100 companies. I went through the balance sheets, and when I went through everything, I came to the kind of conclusion, and research showed us that from 66 out of the 100 companies had less than 25% zakatable assets, right? And the other 34 were like non-Sharia compliant companies, banks, insurance companies, tobacco, alcohol, and those kinds of things. So It's based on that we've got this proxy of 25%, and this is what we encourage people to use, 25%. Pensions, very easily and very simply, pensions again, defined benefit schemes are not zakatable. The only thing you need to worry about is defined contribution schemes, whichever form they're in, whether it's a SIP, ABC, personal pension, stakeholder, workplace. If you have a defined contribution scheme pension, which majority of the people working in the private sector do have. So if you're in the private sector, you will have very likely a defined contribution scheme. Uh, Again, what you have to do really, it's technical, where you have to look at your pension portfolio and breakdown of the assets and see how much each asset is equating to. But what we did is we looked at the top 100 pension funds in these different areas. So property funds, Sharia compliant, equity, diversified, and bonds. This research that I did, it's available online if anybody wants to read about it more. And what we did was then we realized in the research that a property fund generally has, in weighted average terms, it has about 15% zakatable assets. So you can apply your 2.5% on 15%. So if somebody has a property fund where you're investing directly in property, right? It's not, you're not buying shares in companies which invest in property. Rather, you are investing directly in property. The fund direct invests and owns property. In that scenario, you take 2.5% off 15%. If you have a Sharia compliant pension fund, you can just take 26% of your pension portfolio. So if your pension is worth £10,000, 26% is 2,600, right? You will pay 2.5% of 2,600 as your zakah, right? And the same with all other examples. Of course, some are just as a disclaimer, not all of these pensions are Sharia compliant. For example, your diversified or your bonds, Sharia compliance is like a number one issue here. So I would definitely recommend you guys to do something about that. I mean, IFG have got some really good material on pensions, and they've been doing a campaign on Sharia compliant pensions. Ibrahim, if you want to like spare a minute on that.
Yeah, sure. 30% of people in the UK, Muslims, don't have a pension. That's going to cost us £13 billion over the next generation. So we should sort that out. And it's also free money your employer is giving you. The other half of the people who do have a pension have it in haram funds. So you should look to get that transferred over ASAP. For now, focus on zakat. But after Ramadan, we'll be sharing an opinion that we've had from a leading pension QC barrister, which essentially you should give to your employer if they don't agree to switch over your pension to a halal pension. And they'll read that and they'll realize that it's what they're doing is against the law. But more on that after Ramadan, inshallah.
Liabilities. So the final thing is deducting liabilities. You can deduct anything which is payable in the next 12 months, right? Meaning it's incurred right now. It's incurred already. It's a debt you've entered into. It's due within the next 12 months. You can deduct that. So, for example, I've booked a holiday, but I need to pay them in August. I can deduct that right now. Or my council tax, I can deduct all of that right now, because you know how council tax works. The entire sum is payable, but they allow you to pay in installments. So you can deduct your council tax. If you have a long-term debt, like spanning 25 years, 30 years, as a mortgage or something, then it's only if it's a conventional mortgage, then for whatever reason a Muslim entered into a conventional mortgage, he was in a state of desperation, necessity, then he can deduct, or she can deduct 12 months worth of capital payments and not deduct the interest element. Arrears, if you have rent arrears or any arrears, overdue payments, outstanding payments, you can deduct those as well. Now, I just want to stop here, and what I will do is I'm going to show you the NZF calculator. I'm going to bring that up on my screen, and we will quickly see how to do this in practice. So let me just bring up NZF on my browser. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my
We
browser.
can see.
Okay, now so I go to calculate. Okay, calculate my zakat.
I feel like giving commentary on this.
Go ahead.
You carry on, Mufti Saab.
Right. Okay. No, this is not my wealth, by the way. This was for the previous calculation.
Allahu Akbar.
Right. So that was
Cat's out
purely.
the bag.
Huh?
The cat's out of the bag now, Mufti Saab.
Tell me about it. Now, I mean, this was literally in a previous example of it. So what I'll do is I will click on all these assets. Okay. So whatever you own, if you have cash, you click on cash. If you have money owed to you, click on that. Gold, silver, shares. Whichever asset classes apply to you, click on them. Let's start my calculation. And then, of course, this is what I owe. So I might owe mortgage, bills, overdrafts. If you do have debts, click that. What that does is incorporates it within your the process. So look, cash. I have £100 in hand because I don't carry much cash now. Everything's card, everything's plastic, right? Cash in bank accounts. Yeah, I just got paid, so £1,000. Okay. Continue. See, there's NZF have this cool feature to save. So if I don't want to do it right now for whatever purpose, I can just save it and I can continue later on.
Mufti Saab, what's this add another field stuff going on?
Yeah, so what this is, I can put in, for example, I've got cash in, I could say, Dubai or UAE, right? Sitting somewhere in UAE. And
Yeah.
that's 100. So it allows you to just add other fields, other types of cash that you may have somewhere else, right? That's that. Continue.
Brilliant. And all these need help buttons, what are they all about?
So, I mean, if somebody isn't sure, so you've read this little intro, which is enter the amount of cash that you have, but you don't understand in terms of like what are you actually calculating? What's the principle here? So when you click need help, it just tells you like the zakat principle beyond this what you're doing. So zakat is payable on all your money and not just your savings. If you have any interest, riba, this should not be included here and should all be given away. You will still be able to do this later, right? So it just gives you that information. And as you can see on the right hand side, if you have any questions, you can always email us. There's 2-3 scholars who see your emails, including myself, and will assist you, inshallah, with that.
Brilliant. And crypto is a separate section, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Crypto will treat it differently. We don't treat it as cash. It'll be treated elsewhere. So money owed to you, right? If you have money owed to you, so I've got £10 and £100, I've sold something. Right? As I said, remember, it's only from business sales, inventory, and stock. Right? So I've put that in as well. Gold. Now look, with gold, you can either put in the weight. So just say I don't know the price of gold. I don't know how much zakat or how much my gold is worth, but I know it's 50 grams. I can put in 50 grams. Okay. And so the G will show you. You just put the grams. You can change that back into money. But silver, I know it's worth £100, so I put in that. Right. And I can save it here if I want. I can add another field if I'm not sure what this means. It just gives me a little intro there what it means. And then shares. Now this is a cool thing about this calculator where the calculator has embedded the formula that we just discussed. So in terms of the 25%, it's already embedded within it. It's been integrated. So if it's for resell, right? As I said, a day trading scenario, I have £100 of them. I've put that in. However, I have £100 of shares for long term. It's just that I've invested for growth purposes. In the future, one day I will sell them potentially, but right now I'm holding them as part of my diversified portfolio of assets. So what's happening in the back end, I've put this in, but 25% has been applied already in the back end on this, which you don't see, but all you need to do is put the figure, and that's all you have to worry about. Pensions. Now, when it comes to pensions, either you know the amount, okay, on which zakat is payable. So I know, for example, I've already worked it out. I understand pensions and zakat, and I've put in 40%, right? I know it's 40%, and I know the value. I can put the value in. But if you don't know how much zakat to pay, you're lost on pensions, which is very technical. It is difficult. It's not easy. I'll be honest with you, right? Then just click on this. I don't know. Okay. Then all you do is select the type of pension that you have. As we mentioned, the 5 types of pensions, which are generally the categories of different types of categories of pensions that are there. You can look on your fact sheet. It should say at the top of the fact sheet, or ask your HR department. They'll tell you what kind of fund it is. can just click Sharia compliant scheme. Okay. And in my Sharia compliant scheme, I have £1,000. So what's happening in the back end? 26% has been already integrated and coded in. So 26% is being applied on the £1,000. And so you don't have to do nothing else. Just put your pension value, click Sharia compliant pension scheme, and done. Continue. I have a stocks and shares ISA. I've put £1,000 in. Okay. Now look, you might say to me, if it's uh, a junior ISA or CTF, right? Then as a Hanafi, zakat is not due upon that if my child is uh, not mature, right? They're not an adolescent. I won't put that in. But I've got an ISA for myself. So I'm putting £1,000 in. I don't have a cash ISA because I'm not aware of any Sharia compliant ones right now. Majority of them are interest bearing, so that's zero.
Mufti sir, what about the like Arrayan and people like that? If you have like say, that was actually a question I had as well.
Yeah.
Because they, what about if you go with them and they've got this kind of Wagala type structure
Yeah.
or Mudharaba type structure? How do you treat that?
So on that, right? So all of that is zakatable at its full value because they're buying and selling in the back end, right? With that. So generally, the majority of that, what they do is one of two things. Either they invest those funds in home purchase plans where they buy and sell property, and number two, they trade or on the commodity markets, London Metal Exchange, to get a small return for you and pay that to you. So it'll be on the full amount that's in the account.
Maybe this is actually a good point to ask a separate question as well, which is around this like stocks and share stuff, which is, you have companies where people invest in, some of whom you actually advise, people like Intro Crowd, and then you've got Godwin, Gordos, and others like that, where
Yeah,
they use some kind of SPV structure.
yeah.
And, the question is like, for Zakat, do you look at the SPV structure and you think of yourself as a shareholder, or do you just look through at the underlying activity? How do you treat that?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And to be honest, just for everyone's benefit, right? This has been a troubling, or not a troubling one, but there's been a lot of like challenges in understanding the zakat treatment of many of these types of investments where people have been raising questions about long term, short term, what's the underlying asset class. So I've just written a research on this. Alhamdulillah, I've shared it with a few muftis. They've approved and signed off. They agree with the kind of substance of the research, and that's being finalized, and that will be released potentially next week, where I break down this very point. Like, how do you understand investments for zakat purposes? Which investments fall under full zakat, which falls under underlying assets. So it's really breaking it down. But yeah, this is something definitely people will need to address. And yeah, once that article is released and just everybody can find it online, inshallah, it'll be on the NZF website as well as my personal websites for everybody's benefit.
Brilliant.
But yeah, there's a lot of scenarios. The reason why I'm not going through it now, there's so many, like 6 to 7 different scenarios, and each scenario has a potentially not different ruling, but just its own particulars and specifics which need to be read, I believe, to get a full grasp of what's going on. Crypto. If you have crypto, majority of people are, well, not everybody, but many are just buying and selling crypto for quick gains. If you are investing in crypto for long term, then it just depends on the type of crypto it is. So, for example, if it's Bitcoin, that will always be zakatable at its full value because its very essence and nature is to be a payment system. It was created to serve as a medium of exchange, and therefore will treat it as such, and zakat will be due upon it at its full value. Here, it's been treated as trading cryptos, and therefore it's taken at its full value. Business assets, again, if you have a business, you can put your cash, receivables, and stock, as I've put. Up here means inventory, your stock or inventory, receivables, anything owed to you, and cash. So these are my business assets, right? A very modest business I have, right? Money I owe. So I have, for example, this year I'm going to pay 1,000 or £10,000 to my mortgage. As an example, I have an outstanding phone bill that has come through of £35, a monthly contract. I have a loan of, just say, I remember borrowing £2,000 from my brother because I wanted to um, purchase a new car. I don't have any overdraft because I don't find any Sharia compliant ones here, so I stayed away from overdrafts. Credit card, yep, I have an Amex that needs to be paid, and that is £1,000 outstanding there. In terms of business liabilities, I've just bought some new software, accounting software, to assist me in keeping stock count, and therefore it's cost me £50. Continue. Now look at that, right? What happens is it's given me a complete breakdown of what's happened. What I've done above, it's given me a breakdown here. So I own, in terms of wealth zakatable assets, £45,000 or £45,310.25. This is everything that I owe. So everything we put in here, right, the mortgage being the significant sum, right, it's been captured there. So this minus this, right, equals this. Then this is the net zakatable assets, £32,225.25. The Nisab today. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Mufti, I was going to ask about this, the mortgage bit, because I know there's like some scholars say that you should deduct the next year. Some say that you should deduct the next month or so. How, or for rent as well, the next month or so. How should you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the current guidance is the year. Personally, I feel there's definitely room to look at this further and potentially reduce it to 1 month, right? But the current guidance that NZF gives and the scholars give is of 12 months deduction. There's permission for that. When it comes to an Islamic mortgage, then you can only deduct the current month. That's what the scholars advise. But there is scope and some research to do, which inshallah I hope to be doing after Ramadan, on seeing how these kind of contracts are really dealt with and the deduction. Is there another way to look at it? But yeah, the current advice and guidance is 12 months deduction on any other mortgage. When it comes to Islamic mortgages, scholars advise us 1 month. And yeah, look, this is the Nisab. So I'll pay 2.5%, not of this figure, the black figure, rather the green figure, which is £805. So that is my zakat, and that's it. The whole thing. So all the theory you went through, this is the practice. You can just literally put in your figures here, and that works out how much zakat you owe, right? So I'll stop sharing this, and let's go back to our presentation, which is here it is. Okay. Sorry, here we are. We were just over here, right? Now the floor is open, Ibrahim, for people's queries.
Brilliant. Well, the masses have been knocking at the door. It's been like a scene out of Lord of the Rings where, you know, they're attacking the gates. You don't need to confirm or deny if you've seen Lord of the Rings, Mufti Saab. I won't put you on the spot.
No, to be honest, I've not seen it ever, just to confirm.
Fine. Great. Okay, let's dive in. So let's go right to the top of the questions. Salam, can you hear me? I don't think that's a zakat question. Okay, here we go. Salam alaikum. I put money aside each month, different amounts. I know that after the first year I pay zakat for each month, but how do I calculate for the years after?
If they put money aside, they'll be paying every single year. They'll be paying money zakat on the full amount that's been put aside.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, Salam, I have recently remortgaged. The funds came into my account a couple of months ago. I'll be using this for only my son's school fees for the next 3 years. Will I need to pay zakat on this year?
Good questions. So there's 3 things happening here. One is you have your mortgage, which is payable. So for that mortgage, which you remortgage and that debt that you have to pay, you can consider the deduction principles, which is like 12 months, right? Then you have your school fees to pay. That if that's been incurred and due, you can deduct those as well. And in the net of all of that, you have the cash that's with you, right? That cash will be added into your assets. So you will pay zakat on that, but net of after deducting the mortgage and deducting your school fees.
Brilliant. Mufti Saab, if you could, I think, stop the screen share at this point.
Sure.
The powers that be have suggested that would be a good idea. Okay. Let's go to the next question. If an amount in readiness to place a deposit for a house, but circumstances prevent house purchase, does one still pay zakat on that entire amount each year until the property, for personal residential purposes, is purchased?
Yeah. So if you've agreed to purchase property, it's been like a verbal exchange, an agreement, then zakat will not be due upon the deposit amount that you have with you. If there's been no such agreement, you just potentially found a house, or you're still looking for a house but you have the funds, zakat will be due on the funds that are with you.
Right. Why is and Mufti Sahib, what do you think about zakat planning? So, there could be a savvy person who decides, you know what, I'm going to put all this money into a short-term investment that is not zakatable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if the intention is to avoid zakat, then that's not, it's not something good to do. The scholars disliked planning to avoid and evade zakat. But if it's there, generally you want to store your wealth in a different form, then that's absolutely fine. And if that coincides with your zakat year end, there's no problem with that.
Brilliant. Okay, why is pension counted in the zakat calculation as we don't have access to it until retirement?
Yeah, good. This is a common question that comes. Look, when it comes to pensions, is zakat doesn't revolve around access to an investment, right? The fact that you've, with your own volition, you've selected a pension, you bear the investment risk, but it's locked for your benefit and favor, so that it can be income, retirement income for you, right? That's why the government locks this. Otherwise, if you and I had access to a pension, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I would draw down on my pension, right? It's very obvious, very common. It's a large sum. So it's for your own benefit. Zakat works in terms of uh, who owns and the wealth which is growing, productive, and increasing. And investments are the best thing. So pension is just an investment, a long-term one with many benefits, primarily for your retirement. So it is zakatable. The only time when access is considered is when it comes to stuff like collateral. So, for example, if I put a security, if I've put money as a deposit, tenancy deposit, or a collateral somewhere, that's locked away from my benefit. I can't benefit from that wealth. Neither is it being invested on my behalf. Then I don't pay zakat on that. But beyond that, everything else is zakatable.
Makes sense. And there's a question about cryptocurrency. It just says cryptocurrency question mark zakat question mark. But I guess at this point, let me put a bit more flesh onto that question, which I think could be helpful for people. I know we glossed over cryptocurrency, in the calculation, but what about the fact that there's now like 5,000 cryptocurrencies out there, and it seems at least one Muslim is holding at least one of these things,
Yeah.
and that that Muslim has at least one or two questions. So how, as a principle, as like a kind of set of rules to just, because obviously I don't think it's actually feasible for Mufti Faraz or any Mufti to be able to just say definitively you need to pay zakat on these particular, because it's a complicated thing to look into each cryptocurrency. As a rule, how should people approach the cryptocurrencies that they hold if
Look,
they want? Yeah,
on that, I would say is you rather err on the side of caution and just pay zakat on the full amount, right? If you feel that you're buying and selling and that's your intention. Otherwise, and it's difficult because look, there's 6 7 different types of cryptos and each has its own kind of thing where, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash, and these things where you're buying to sell, well, the medium of exchange and payment systems, zakat is due upon the full amount. But when it comes to other things like utility tokens, governance tokens, security tokens, asset backed tokens, platform tokens, the treatment of that is different, whereby it's based upon its value. Well, what's happening? Have you bought to resell? Number one. If not, then what is it? What is the token? If it's asset backed, what is it representing? If it's a security token, what's the underlying? So all these question marks are raised. And to be honest, so for your purposes, I would say if you know with 100% coins or tokens which are similar to Bitcoin, right, as payment systems, pay on the full amount regardless. If it's something else, then very likely, and it's long term that you're holding for, you've not bought to sell, then it's potentially likely that there's no zakat due upon it because there'll be utility tokens or platform tokens, right, like gas and these things. So uh, that's like a rule of thumb.
brilliant. Guys, we're launching the poll, feedback poll. So please do, whilst we're in the Q&A, have a look through that and answer away on those questions. That'd be really helpful for us to kind of get a sense of where you're at, inshallah, and keep improving. Let's carry on.
If I could just come in, Ibrahim. Sorry for interrupting. The purpose that we're asking, and this is Mahbub from National Zakat Foundation. The purpose of this poll is to gauge how you're before and how you are after, and more importantly, how we can improve this offering. The key thing here is to make you more confident with your zakah. So we want every single person that's currently here, all 155 of you, to fill this in. Thank you, Ibrahim, for that. Thank you, guys.
Okay. And if you don't do it, we'll hunt you down. No, we won't do it. Don't worry about that.
No, we won't do that.
So let's carry on. And by the way, there's a one-to-one consultation available with NZF as well. So if you've got some really quite technical questions, then that's probably the best place to go for that. But what we'll do is we'll really fire through the answers here so that we can get through as many as we can quite quickly. Okay, for those with a debt that is greater than equity or assets they possess, do they pay zakat? If so, is it based on their operational income?
Yeah, good question. So now remember, we don't consider the entire debt. It's only the 12 months worth that you can deduct, and that's what you'll use to deduct. So yeah, if that scenario is you have more debt than asset within the 12 months, then you won't pay any zakat.
Brilliant. If I have separate savings accounts which I add money in monthly, do I need to deduct the last year's earnings and pay zakat on the remaining that has not been touched?
No, you don't. You pay on the entire amount. It's not, zakat doesn't work with earnings, so it's not like tax in that sense. Rather, it's what's retained and unspent. That's what you pay zakat on, the full amount.
Great. If I have separate, okay, that's the same one. Salam. Some proposes to use current asset percentage method for long-term position. Is this okay to do? And if so, how easily can I find that info for publicly traded stocks and mutual fund?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you'll have to go through a balance sheet. It's not as easy. You have to break it down. If you understand financial statements, then you're more than welcome to do that. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to use the 25%. That inshallah should cover your liability.
There's a Mufti Sahib, I've always had this like crazy pet project. Maybe I'll do that when I'm 70, where you create this zakat calculator which tracks absolutely every single asset you have and starts to howl on it live. But anyway, that's a separate question.
Yeah, I think we should do a project on that. It'd be amazing.
Is zakat will be applicable in Islamic ISAs and SIP accounts?
Yeah, I mean, look, Islamic, it just depends on underlying structure. Usually it's wakala or mudaraba that's used, and zakat will be due upon them at its full value.
Brilliant. And I've lent some money, and they have said they will pay me back. They are close family, so I trust that they will, as we've discussed this, but we just haven't put a time frame or payment plan in place. Do I include these amounts in my deductibles?
This is a major problem, and I face this honestly regularly, where brothers, sisters, relatives, they lend to one another and there's no payment plan. This is not right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to be very clear in our transactions, even if it's your family member. Do it cordially and lovingly, but do have some kind of payment plan in place, because things can get very messy afterwards. Right. So for example, now zakat is due and it's a large sum. You don't want to pay the zakat, right? Because you don't know when you're going to get that money back. So it's impacting you and your obligation to Allah. So I would say do two things. One is put a payment plan in place. Speak to them and say, look, it's just good to have our finances in place and in order. And then start paying. You need to pay zakat on it anyway. You can wait either until you receive the money back, or you can start paying now. But I would say first thing first is have a discussion with them and put a payment plan in place.
Yeah, great shout. And zakat is a great point to do that in quite an elegant way as well, because
absolutely,
it's like, look, I need to give charity. I want to give charity. I just need a payment plan to get my money back as a result of that. Yes. So
there'll be no hard feelings then, right?
Exactly. So how do you determine if a family member meets the needs for zakat?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two ways. Either you can ask them very clearly, but sometimes knowing, it's just naturally the other person feels it's not a polite conversation to have or a pleasant conversation to have. Otherwise, you can just look at the external, the apparent. Do they look like they're zakat eligible? Do you know anything about the income, about how much they have? If you feel confident that they are zakat eligible because they're in heavy debt, they don't have a job, for example, by just looking at the apparent, you can give zakat on that basis. Right? You don't have to do any further kind of digging or interrogation.
Brilliant. And is it like, as a bit basic rule of thumb, the idea is that every month, if they're ending up kind of they're ending up in the negative, basically, that's a probably pretty good sign that they.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another sign. But then you just have to make sure you give it to them in the right time at the end
Yeah.
of the month when they're in the negative. That's all.
If you have a liquid asset that qualifies for zakat, how do you pay zakat on it if you don't have enough cash at hand to make up for what you owe?
Did you say illiquid asset?
Illiquid asset, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's illiquid, I mean, what you should do then is if it's stock, for example, like you have, and it's illiquid, no, it's dead stock or whatever it may be, you can give the stock itself as zakat. Right? So you can give zakat in kind. It doesn't have to be in cash. That's one way to deal with this. Number two is if you only have cash to pay as zakat, then you can distribute, you can spread that and enter into a payment plan. So you pay every month £5, £10 to cover the zakat liability of that asset.
Yeah. Do you pay zakat on gold-plated jewelry or only pure gold jewelry?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good question. In reality, gold-plated jewelry has a very minute percentage of gold, right? Very, very small, right? You could give it, but generally scholars say zakat is not due upon it, but there's a very small percentage fraction, very, very small, right? Minuscule. So if you wanted to give, there would be no harm in giving like £1 for it.
Brilliant. What if the money owed to you is way more than you have in cash assets and cash right now? I guess we've answered that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can just wait until you're paid back or pay in kind. You can give something in charity, like for example, clothing as zakat.
Yeah.
So
What
you have
about
expensive
diamonds?
designer wear, right? You got expensive Gucci bag or something, right? You can give that as zakat.
For sure. What about diamonds?
There's no zakat on diamonds, but you can always give that in zakat. I'm sure that people will charities will accept that happily.
Allahu Akbar. So there we are. There's another. Honestly, I sometimes feel like uh, there's so many different ways that you can actually, if you plan it properly, you don't necessarily have to end up paying zakat every year. But obviously, that shouldn't be the intention.
And neither should that be the conversation here.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Someone,
yeah, you're absolutely right, though. I agree.
I mean, on this topic, someone's asking, what about the Maliki school? Is that someone's trying to work out if you should switch over to another school now? But I think
The Maliki school has a few differences when it comes to like debts and stuff.
But that's the thing, guys. Look, if you're all in on a school, you have to be all in fully, right? You can't switch for zakat and like salah and like all this other stuff.
Yeah, it can't be a mishmash of different things.
Yeah. What about the finance received from the bank for construction of a house?
Yeah, good question. So again, if it's for construction of house purposes, you can deduct 1 year's payables, but nothing more than that.
Interesting. Okay. How do you work out the zakat for silver or gold? I think we've covered that already.
Yeah.
Rented income over the year or funds in your account at the time of your zakat anniversary.
Yeah. So
Right, fine, yeah.
yeah, so you pay zakat on the income that you have that's retained with you, unspent amount on your zakat anniversary.
Yeah. It's basically treated like income, right?
Yeah.
So if we keep shares for 3 months and sell, would I still have to pay zakat on the full amount?
So this depends on when you bought the cells initially. So you don't look at it in terms of upon 3 months. Initially when you purchased, what was your intention? Was it part of your portfolio, but then incidentally you just sold after 3 months, right? Or were you very clear that I'm selling now? I'm just waiting for the price to come, but I've bought to sell. Then that scenario you'll pay on the full amount.
Right. And what if like you change your intention? Is it you just look at your current live intention?
That's right. So if you change, but then there's two things appear. If you switch from bought to sell to hold now and not sell, there's no zakat due on the full amount now. You'll pay zakat on the underlying zakatable assets. However, if you purchased to hold as long term or as part of your portfolio, where you had to pay zakat on the underlying assets, but you switched halfway to wanting to sell it now, you want to get rid of it and liquidate your holdings, zakat will still not be due on the full value. It'll only be due upon the underlying assets. So only when you've purchased to sell and that intention remains the same will you pay on the full amount.
Understood. Read the 25% of the FTSE 100 for zakatable assets. Do you have a proxy for interest cleansing equivalent, please?
Not really, no. I mean, when it comes to, everybody knows the maximum you can have of impure income is 5%, right? So if anything is earning 5% or more in interest earnings as a company or impure earnings, then it's not permissible to invest in that company in the first place.
How do you use scrap gold price if I don't know how many grams of gold are in my gold ring, especially if it has a stone in it?
Yeah, I mean, what I would advise then, now the stores are back open, right? I would take the jewelry to the, a jewelry store and ask the goldsmith to look into it and give you a precise amount. They will tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah. Regarding pensions, how does the ability to opt in or opt out affect a fatwa on defined benefit or defined contribution? I heard some scholars say that any pension where you have a choice to be part of all pensions are like that, then there is zakat. They don't discuss about defined benefit, defined contribution.
Yeah, see, look, the different. Well, they're really referring to defined benefit. Why is there a difference between defined benefit schemes and defined contribution schemes? The reason is, without getting too technical, a defined benefit scheme, you don't own the investment risk. It's not yours. Your employer owes you. He has a liability, a guarantee to pay you upon retirement, a certain amount, which is defined by a formula. Either that's your final salary formula or your career average. These are two different formulae which help them work out how much you are owed. But you don't own the underlying investment. It's just a liability to you towards you. And remember, we discussed liabilities and receivables. The third type of receivable, which is salary. Outstanding salary is not zakatable, and that's what defined benefit schemes are. In essence, it's just outstanding salary that's owed to you in the future.
Yeah. How do I find out if my Transport for London or National Grid pension is halal? Ask your HR.
Yeah,
Find
I mean, find out what they are. Generally, they're defined benefit schemes, which are generally okay.
Can you deduct rent? Answers.
Rent that you're paying or rent that's so I mean, I guess you're paying the rent, that's why you want to deduct it. Yeah, I mean, you can deduct this month's rent. Yeah.
Uh, is the teacher pension permissible? Yeah, that's defined benefit as well. Is it possible to download this tool in Excel? I don't think so. We need it in dollars, someone says. Okay. Slightly separate, but as a Muslim, is it a sin to pay interest, mortgage? And if it is a sin, how can we rectify this?
I mean,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not.
this is I would say because it's a zakat, I don't want to talk about interest transactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could come in here, there's actually another place where questions are being gathering as well. So Ibrahim, if you can look on the Q&A section, it's where members of the of this group here have upvoted certain questions. So if you want to hop over to where it says Q&A, I know we have 5 minutes left on the clock and there are many things to do. Would it be possible, for the benefit of everyone who's kindly stuck it out, to extend it by a few more minutes? Would that be okay, Mufti Faraz, with your permission?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Ibrahim, would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and we'll whiz through. I understand there's a lot of questions, and again, just to re-emphasize, any questions that aren't answered, we do have bespoke one-to-one consultations there to to address your questions. So we'll post the link on the chat, and you can go through there. But we'll try our best now, both Ibrahim and Mufti Faraz, to go through these upvoted questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. So my zakat is due in Ramadan, but I'm about to have a major project that will cost me a lot of money. Costs are due within days. Do I still pay zakat before I starting my project?
Yeah, so if you've already contracted and those costs are now incurred, but it is payable in a couple of days, then you can deduct that amount that's due.
Great. So that's done. What madhab will this presentation follow? There are many differences between the different madhab.
Yeah, I mean, look, I outlined the key differences. The only area which I did not discuss in terms of differences was the Nisab, where the Shafi school and others have this difference where you have to have funds over and above the Nisab for the entire year, where the Hanafis don't mind a bit of fluctuation is absolutely fine.
Great. Okay. This. Do I have I have a separate savings account for my children, all aged under 10. Do I pay zakat on this?
It just depends upon which madhab you follow. If you follow the Hanafi school, then no. If you follow other madhabs, then yes, you need to pay. You can pay from their wealth as well. It's not necessary as a guardian and the other madhabs, you can pay from the children's wealth, zakat on their behalf, or if you want, you can pay from your wealth. And of course, there's always more reward in doing that.
Can payment for an extension on my house due May and car deposit due September be deducted when calculating my zakat?
Yeah, I mean, because you've already contracted those transactions, therefore you can deduct them right now.
Interesting. but isn't arguably then wouldn't that apply to rent as well then, Mufti Saab?
It does. You're absolutely right. I mean, rent is if you have a short-term, short hold tenancy for 6 months, it's all due really, right? You're just paying it on a monthly basis. But the thing is, the only problem when it comes to deducting, and which we always tell people from NZF is, many of these payments, look, why were debts deductible in the first place? They were there so that it shouldn't be that your zakat payment prevents you from paying off your debt. So your zakat shouldn't be a barrier from paying off the debt. That's not the case many a time now. Most people can afford to pay zakat and pay the debts when it's due eventually, right? In the next couple of months. So we then just tell people, look, if you don't need to deduct, then just pay zakat on whatever you have, because the way our economy works, we live in a debt-based economy. All of us have so many different types of debts. If we were to deduct all our debts, most of us would not pay zakat, right? That's the truth of life. So to think of that as well when you're looking at debts.
Yeah. Salaam alaikum. I put money aside each month, different amounts. I know that after the first year I pay zakat each month. How do I calculate? Well, I think we've answered this one. Done. The NZF calculator seems to use your bank balance and the date of the calculation rather than assets owned for more than a year. I'm a bit confused by this.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again? What are they confused about?
It seems to use the NZF calculator seems to use your bank balance and the date of the calculation rather than the assets owned for more than a year. I think it's a snapshot thing that they're.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, look, it's not about, as I said, you can do that the way you want, right? You can put in. It's not what if you want to put in assets you've held for a year and you follow that view, like the Shafi'i view that you have to have held it over the Nisab for the entire year, you can put that amount in. So you can play and use the calculator according to your madhab, really.
Yeah, makes sense. When you have a rental property, what do you pay zakat on? The yearly rent, less expenses. Oh, that's disappeared. Less expenses, i.e., maintenance, council tax, Islamic finance costs, etc., or on the value of the property.
Yeah, so it's not the value of the property. What you'll be doing is you can pay zakat. You'll add up all the rental income that you have, the unspent amount right now. You can deduct any costs which are payable and due, right? They've been incurred. But future maintenance, future costs, you can't deduct right now.
I don't know when I originally hit the Nisab threshold. Is it okay to just take it from now and do it in 12-month periods going forward?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't, that is, if it's very difficult to work it out, backtracking, going back, then yeah, you can do that. Just use now. But if you can, then just try to sit down and just put a bit more effort in trying to work out exactly when you are liable to pay zakat.
Does deductible liabilities include student loans?
Nope, they don't deduct. That's not included because that's deducted at source anyway from your income. It just depends on how much you're earning.
Right. I have a 45K student loan from med school. Do I deduct 12 months of the loan for the following year?
No, you don't deduct
that. I borrowed money from my mother to purchase a house 2 years ago. I have not purchased a house yet due to self-employment status, and she is requesting her money back if I have no intention to buy the house. Do I need to pay zakat on this money if I intend to buy the house in the next few months, or does my mum pay the zakat?
Yeah, a very good question. So when it comes to this scenario where if you have no intention to pay her back within the next 12 months and that money is staying with you, then you will treat it as your asset and pay zakat on that, right? And she will also be liable as a lender to pay zakat, right? So it's an asset for you because now you have no intention to pay it back for zakat purposes. That is, it's an asset for you, and for the lender, it's also an asset. So you will both now pay zakat on that wealth. However, if you have an intention to pay her back in the next couple of months or give the whole money back, you will not pay zakat because now it becomes a liability which will be paid back.
Interesting. So this is one of the edge cases where zakat is paid twice.
Exactly, but it's not really. It's twice, but it's considered to be assets for both. It's on that consideration.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. I bought some crypto 4 years ago, and I honestly thought you don't have to pay zakat on your holdings until you convert it in cash and get it back in your bank account. I would like to know how much I should pay now to make it up, especially since the value of the crypto didn't stop evolving during those 4 years. That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many charts available where you can look back each year and see what the value of a particular crypto was. So just do that. Look at the historical values for each crypto, and every year, whatever it was on your zakat year end, just pay the equivalent amount in zakat.
Brilliant. Salah. Also, what if the zakat I have to pay on my crypto is higher than the money I have available in fiat? The issue is that I can't afford to withdraw the crypto because of potential issues with tax. Is there an association which I can pay zakat in crypto directly?
Yeah, I think NZF accept Bitcoin. And Mahbub, you want to jump in here? I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, so thank you for much, Faraz. We are imminently going to announce that. So in the next few days, inshallah, if not a few more.
Spoiler
So,
alert! Spoiler.
spoiler alert. What we'll do then in that case, in the post-event communications and the email that we send with the slides and the video, we'll also give a link that for those that want to pay in cryptos can do so. So watch this space.
Allahu Akbar. When a NZF going properly into DeFi?
If I knew what that was, I could answer. So not all questions need to be answered.
They're doing ZFi right now. No, it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
قالوا سكت وقد خُصِمت قلت لهم إن الجواب لباب الشر مفتاح. I'll leave that untranslated. Salam, I'm married and me and my husband have shared savings accounts. Do we both have to pay zakat or just one person? Is it just a matter of intention that we're both paying zakat together? Also, what about the gold he gifted me?
Yeah, so in that instance, primarily each party is responsible for the amount they own in that joint account, but you can just pay from the account itself, right, and treat that account as been paid. So 2.5% of whatever's in the account, and you both agree that's the way you'll deal with the zakat, and that's absolutely fine. But it would be good for inheritance purposes and for Sharia purposes, right, to have clarity on it's a 50-50% ownership, right? That is generally the norm from a Sharia perspective as well, that when there's a lack of clarity, you really own that pot of funds at 50-50.
If Muslims are the only nation that pays zakat and is allowed to alleviate and get the poor out of poverty, then why is the Muslim nations disproportionately have higher number of poor people comparative to nations that do not pay zakat?
I mean, just one thing with the whole zakat thing is in a vacuum where it's not really multiple things are happening because there's multiple variables right now. It's not really zakat; it's rather external factors which are impacting. Which it's another discussion, really.
Yeah. How do you search for good and genuine zakat organizations, and how to verify if they actually spend it the way they say they do?
I mean, I would say two things, and Ibrahim I feel free to come in there. Is I would say number one is zakat policy. If they have a zakat policy, transparency is very important. And I would ask Ibrahim, as IFG, you chose charities to work with. What were your criteria? And this would really help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to do some videos on this as well in the coming few weeks, inshallah. But the thinking here is that for me, overheads isn't actually that big a deal as long as the key thing is, the zakat is being delivered in an efficient and transparent way, ideally in a localized way. The zakat, the organization should be people that you can trust, that have credibility in the space within which they operate. So, we chose NZF because, I've always historically supported NZF's mission to give zakat locally. I think that they're a very progressive charity in terms of, trying to bring that transparency. Look, so these days you can actually go on the NZF website and see the amount given per borough in, across the UK, which is, I think, incredible. And you can see, how much came in from there and how much went out, which is, that's pretty high level of transparency. And then the second people that we worked with is Islamic Relief, and the thinking there was that people definitely want to give abroad, and 90% of the charity we raise goes abroad in the UK. But when you give abroad, you need a charity that has large infrastructure and this, the operations and the scale to actually deliver that in a way that's, successful. So that's where, we went for Islamic Relief, which was the largest and biggest, charity in this space. And they've got really, really quality kind of governance and transparency levels in place as well. And when I say that, I've talked to the CEOs and the accountants and all of the people behind this as part of these, these kind of decision-making processes. Okay, cool. So what if I am a Maliki and my husband is Hanafi? How do we pay zakat? You said Hanafis don't pay zakat for adolescent savings accounts. So what do I do?
Yes, I mean, you will deal with your own situation, right? So if of course, you're an adolescent, so you'll pay zakat accordingly. The Hanafi will pay his zakat accordingly. The only time where the question will arise is on the children, which madhab they follow, and that you can agree amongst yourselves.
If you're anything but Hanafi, you can get out the house. Similar questions to a lot of attendees around Zakat and defined contribution pensions, and also upcoming committed liabilities. I think we've covered that. If you pay Zakat at different times, not one-time transaction. What's happened? My total amount changes a lot from day to day due to crypto. So how do I calculate the 2.5%? Do I take just one day and stick with it, this amount of money, and distribute it then, or how do I do it?
Use the same date that you're using for everything else.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've answered this one. What are the calculations for paying Zakat on your only residential home as it's an asset?
No zakat during your residential home.
This is the answer where it feels like go pick up £200 and carry on. Where does the 2.5% come from? Who decided on this percentage?
It was the Prophet himself in the hadith where he mentioned when it was 200 dirhams, there's 5 dirhams in 200 dirhams and 1 dinar in 20 dinar.
This is actually not a question on here, but related to this, maybe like just a quick heads up to people with agricultural assets or livestock, because some people have things like that back in Pakistan or India or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I mean, a good question. So on that, there's particular principles around livestock, which it depends on what the livestock. Not everything is zakatable. But if you have cows, camels, or sheep, then there is zakat on there. What I would say is just contact us if you have anything of that sort, right? We'll exactly tell you what zakat is due accordingly.
Brilliant. Can I deduct 12 months of car lease amount owed?
In principle, you can, but if there's any interest payable, then of course you can't deduct that amount.
I mean, this is a sensational question, Mufti Saab. Are you ready for this?
Go ahead.
Is zakat payable on stainless steel cutlery or the sort of silver found in iPhones, MacBooks, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, this question came up in the last session, right? There is gold in these assets, right? And if you know you have an asset which has gold within it, then it would still be zakatable in that sense, right? If it's to a significant value, depending what it is, what the asset is, right? But generally, it would still be zakatable.
Interesting. But arguably isn't, I mean, these days, phones, people basically wear them as like, their clothing, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow that view, I mean, there's a scenario where a different scenario when it permanently becomes a different asset. It's not considered to be gold. For example, if you have a gold tooth, right? There's a debate on that. How do you treat that when it's permanently stuck as a tooth? So it just depends what it is and where it is to really get a clearer answer. But there are scenarios when it's detachable or when it's removable potentially, and it can be liquidated. That's when potentially zakat would attract to that asset.
Right. I have money in a limited company. Maybe let's go for the next 3 questions, and then maybe let's wrap up if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
I have money in a limited company that I can withdraw as profit, but will it be taxed 10% or 80% or 28% to be confirmed by my accountant? Do I need to pay zakat on the profit after tax or exact amount in the company bank account before tax?
Look, because now first find out how much tax is due, right? It's more or less been accrued, right? It's payable. Then you can deduct the tax and then pay, right? So once your accountant tells you how much tax you have to pay, you can deduct that amount because you've already earned that income, right? So the tax liability is more or less there, just depending on your expenses. So once the expenses and everything has been deducted, then tax will become payable on the net and remaining after the thresholds. Then you just can deduct that amount.
Interesting. So there's a long answer so basically someone got in touch with Ethis and was asking about his zakat liability, and they said it's a musharaka agreement. So usually you'd have to pay on the proportion of zakatable assets in the company. But here they said that the zakatable assets are only existent for a small period of time. So what they recommend is an investor may account his zakat only after receiving his capital plus profit and adding to other zakatable assets. In other words, only pay once you've got the money back. They're asking, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to disregard anything what they've said. I don't know the full context either, but if that's the advice they've given you, they're more than welcome to follow that advice, because they do have a Sharia board.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Can my sister let me look for a good one to finish off with. Oh, here's a good one. Is a zakat figure pre or post gift aid contribution?
It's your zakat is pre, right? So you don't include the gift aid.
Yeah. And what about like a business that gets benefits because they gave zakat?
That's fine. That's not a problem at all, because the principle is you can't benefit from the recipient. But if you benefit from third parties like the government or something like that, that's not the recipient, and therefore it's absolutely fine.
Jazakallah khair, everyone. Let's wrap up there, because I think otherwise we'll probably be here and the next hole will have been upon us at that point. It's got like 70 odd questions and rising still. I appreciate there's a fair few questions still out there that haven't been answered. There's a few places that you can go. The first is NZF's website, where a lot of, you'll find resources there. You'll also be able to get one-to-one consultation with NZF scholars that you can book into as well. So you should look into that. Any other places, Mahbub? Mahbub, okay. And of course, you've got IFG as well. You've got the forum there that you can ask the Mufti's questions, or just Google anything to do with zakat, and you'll find some really good resources that a lot of people have put out there. Alhamdulillah. Just make sure that that you check the source as well, that it's a reliable one, because I know there's so many questions that sometimes Google is often the best place as a kind of starting point as well. But appreciate everyone attending this. I'm just looking at the poll. Jazakallah khair for everyone that fill the poll out. If you haven't, please do take a moment to do that. Jazakallah khair to Mufti Faraz for taking the time out to talk us through all of this today in such a clear and prescient way, and for Mahbub for his timely interventions, and also his fantastic background. I mean, I just think that's worth.
You want to see it, don't you?
I want to see it. Allah.
So here it is now. It's a work in progress. So still working on it though. And when I get it done, I'll share with you my tips, inshallah. But yeah, thank you, brothers. Thank you, Mufti Faraz, especially for the extended 15 minutes. And thank you, Ibrahim, as well for hosting so beautifully. Yeah, that's it. We'll leave it at the end. Everyone will receive a copy of the slides and all of the relevant information and a recording of this session. So yeah, we'll conclude here. Thank you once again.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.